My name is Eduardo Halfon. I'm from Guatemala. And the last name, the pronunciation of my last name goes many ways. It could be Halfon, Halfon. It's an Arab name. My grandfather was from Lebanon, so however you want. I have been here before. This is my second time. I was here last year, and I'm here for a few things, a round table with the Spanish department. Just, you know, I'm living in Nebraska, so it was an easy trip. I just drove up. Well, I was just in a class, so one question they will always ask a writer is, what is your favorite book? And it's like asking somebody, what is your favorite food? You know, it's unanswerable, honestly. You have moods. So that's one question. Another question is, of my writing, is people really want to know your procedure. You know, how do you write? Do you write in the morning? Do you have any quirks? Do you have a routine? People are really interested in the technical part of your writing. Do you know what you're going to write about before you begin, or do you just wing it? So that's a question you always get, you know, about the formalities of how you do it. Yeah, well, I need a quiet place. I can only write in silence. So that is probably the most important thing for me. It's just complete silence, which means not only a silent environment, but no interruptions, no cell phone, no internet. I write for brief periods of time, but I need the concentration, you know? So I try to shut everything out, which also means that I can't write in hotels, I can't write in cafes, I can't write when I'm traveling. I have to write at home. Wherever home is. Home has been many places, but I need to feel that it is my place, and silence plays a big part in that. Yeah. It varies. It varies. I grew up with two languages. You know, I'm a Spanish speaker by birth, but I grew up in the United States, so English became my stronger language. So most of my big reads in the past have been English writers, American writers. And since I write mostly short stories, I will tend to constantly revisit Carver and Hemingway and Cheever, and the classics also, you know, Chekhov. Chekhov is a nightstand book, we say in Spanish. You know, it's always there. You revisit it constantly. So I would say Chekhov. Yeah. I'm going to change your question a bit, and it's not the environmental circumstances, but the internal circumstances. I can only work well if I'm unwell internally, which is a strange thing to say, and it's a strange thing to explain. I'll try. If I am content internally, if I am at peace, or you know, just usually I can't write well. I'll write flat with little emotion. It's a strange thing, but I've noticed this lately, that the worse off I feel, not physically, but just emotionally, or mentally, usually you're in touch with other areas, or that puts you in touch with other areas. Not dark, you know. It's not a depression thing. It's not that you need to be in pain to write, but it definitely helps. You know, it definitely helps to confront that fear, or those fears, or those subject matters that you usually shy away from when you're content. You know, you block them out. It's like getting a shot of anesthesia and just going through life floating, by. So usually it's not the environmental. You know, I spoke to you about that. I need silence, so I can't work in other circumstances at all. But when I do sit down and write, it needs to be, I need to get in touch with certain parts of certain areas of my psyche that usually in normal day life, you just block out. So that would be probably my answer. Yeah. Yeah, several ways. They're not, I don't do it consciously, but I know, for example, that if I don't read, I'm unable to write. So reading, especially certain books or certain authors, or, you know, I think what it does is just, it brings back the enthusiasm that you have for writing, which you can lose that sometimes, you know. It's just, it's hard work. It's not an inspiration thing. It's not you know, it's work. It's a craft. And most of the time or energy you spend on it is work. So sometimes that can get tedious, and you can, you know, slack a bit. And usually when you read great writing, you know, that gets you enthused again about your own writing. So that's one, definitely. Traveling. Yeah, when I travel, and it's hard for me to travel because I'm so systematic about my writing routine, so I don't want to leave it too often. But when I do travel, you're sponging, you know, you're just absorbing all types of anecdotes and characteristics, you know, people's phases, for example, or the way they say something, or just the way they move. It doesn't have to be something big, but just those little things you bring back in your suitcase are material. So traveling is another way to recharge, as you say it. Yeah. I would say that I usually cut more than I add. Yeah. Since I'm a short story writer, I will usually blot out, you know, most of the story. I wouldn't say a particular word or a particular phrase or a particular aspect that repeats itself, but just the act of getting rid of, you know, the act of making the story succinct and getting rid of all the frills and all the little, you know, those aspects of it that just are adornment. So yeah, a lot. For a long time, I carried around my grandfather's story, and I was unwilling to write it. My grandfather survived the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz, and I knew this story for a long time, you know, and I knew I had to write it, and I was just unwilling to do it, you know, because of the subject matter, another book about that subject. So there was a fear in assuming, in delving into that part of my family. So I would carry it around, I would mention it, I would talk about it, and up until a few years ago I was unwilling to write it, and I did finally write it. I just think there's a maturity that a story needs to achieve, you know, within you before it can come out. And it is a natural process, or it should be a natural process for a writer. You shouldn't force those things, but you should also not shy away from them when you do have to face them. So I can't think of one now, but I'm sure I have them. You know, those stories that I'm still getting close to. For example, Guatemala. Guatemala for me is a big issue. I have a big problem with Guatemala. I left so young that I don't identify at all with the country, with the people. I see Guatemala as most people from the outside see it, you know, as an outsider. So the subject matter of Guatemala, socially, politically, the civil war that, you know, went on for 40 years, the poverty, the violence of it, that is also one of those subjects that I'm tentative about. It'll get there. Who is a writer? I think everyone is a writer, but not everyone knows how to write. Well, it's a blurby answer, you know. It's one of those answers that you can doesn't mean much. I don't know what it means. If you knew my past, Ben, you'd understand that answer. It's just because I'm an engineer. I don't come from writing, so I have this idea that everyone has a story. Yeah. everybody, you know? It's just not everybody can tell it. And the telling of a tale is more important than the tale itself. And that's what differentiates the writer from the non-writer. It's just the craft, you know?